we're going to talk about our security documents. Now, we actually have several security documents, but we just called it the security section. Today, I am happy to welcome Marty Reynolds from A4A, Jan Hennig from GAMA, and Patrick Morrissey from Collins Aerospace. I am not their program director, and I wanted to let them talk about where they see the safety standards, why they're important, and why you should be concerned. Again, Special Committee 216 is an active committee, so this is work they're doing right now. So, gentlemen, please take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think I'm kicking this off and then we'll go around the room here. But when it comes in context of 178 and 254, when it comes to software and hardware, the work of 216 is probably the new group among those work activities. But looking back in time, 216 was charted almost 2 decades ago now, back in 2007. So 2 decades, it's certainly not a green committee, and a great deal of good work has been done, not only by the RTCA team, but like you mentioned before, in collaboration with the EuroCA team and many international stakeholders. So as I mentioned, 216 was kicked off in a request from an avionics supplier and an aircraft manufacturer in 2007. We were starting to see connected aircraft connectivity at a new level. And the dialogue got underway. What was really good about it starting at that point in time, even though at that point the aircraft across the board were not necessarily that highly connected, was that from where I sit, and I'm more on the regulatory and policy side, when the FAA came knocking on our door in 2014 and said, cyber is becoming a big issue, the US government is engaging in this topic, the world is becoming much more complex, we had a starting point. And that starting point was the expertise and the standards that have been developed in 216. At that time, 326, 355, 356, and so forth. So the FAA stood up a rulemaking group, and it's already been mentioned earlier. It's the ASIS working group, Aircraft System Information Security and Protection. And it met for about a year. The support was from across the manufacturer community. We had A4A there. We had ALPA. We had several airlines, but also from the regulators. It was FAA, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, Transport Canada, ANAC Brazil, plus several government agencies like DoD, Coast Guard, and others. So it became a forum where we looked at the existing standards, but we also up-leveled a little bit and looked at the way forward from a policy perspective. So what came out of that? There were 30 recommendations. One of them pointed to the need to really close up the rule space and assert that the FAA has clear authority in this area. But it also provided direction back to 216 to do some work to move the standards forward. And that got underway. The FAA started its implementation activities, and that was positive. Setting aside our regulators and shifting to the US Congress, if you go back to the middle of the last decade, again, cyber was front and center. There were articles quite frequently about aviation and cybersecurity. Some of them, it's a somewhat salacious topic. There were some stories that were clearly misinformed, but we were in a position to say we're working with the government, the technical standards are matured, and the aircraft that meet certain criteria, the FAA are applying special condition to those aircraft, and the means of compliance, the way to meet those special conditions is through the documents generated under the RTCA EuroCA umbrella. Congress did weigh in. If you look at the 2016 FAA Extension Act, the 2018 reauthorization, that is probably still the reauthorization we are living under for a few more minutes today, May 15th. Congress did point to RTCA in this work and said, we from the public perspective, from the elected officials' perspective, cyber needs to be addressed, and we have a starting point here with ASIS and 216. We do expect a 2024 reauthorization. It does actually have about a half a dozen new provisions that discusses cybersecurity. Some of them point to the need for rulemaking and leveraging the work that's been done here. But I would expect in some of the areas, Patrick and I just talked a couple of days ago, there's some areas that warrant clarification, and potentially I would see a potential. We still need to look at the final text, tasking back to 216 to do some of the technical work that the policy developers have come up with. So again, good work being done in this area. For the immediate near term, we should expect an FAA rule, the long-awaited one, to be published any day. It was slated for April of this year, and I'm told by the agency that it's short final. We should see it any day. And I'd venture to say the collaboration will still continue. We see other agencies weigh in on aviation security. TSA came knocking on our doors a couple of years ago, and we led them down the path to the work that's been done with the FAA, with the ACES, with 216. And I think that really helped TSA take on this new challenge for that agency. We've established the connection so that FAA and TSA are working together, and other government agencies that are weighing in the space as well. So with that said, I think Marty, you're up next. Over to you, sir.
Well, Jens, thanks so much for that. And Patrick, Jens, it's great to be on another panel with you. I feel like I'm rehacking my panel currency with you guys, so it's great to be here with y'all. I thought, what I just start talking about a little bit is about why it's so important to have these standards in place. Like Jens talked about, cybersecurity may be somewhat new in the standard setting arena, but it's, aviation and standards have been hand in hand since the beginning. In fact, my organization, although it's called Airlines for America today, it used to be Air Transport Association, got started in 1936, primarily focused on standards. And it's been over those course of years, the standard setting bodies like RTCA have been fundamental to setting up these standards. And I was just kind of writing through the other speakers some of the key words they said too, and things like streamline, safety, efficiency, better outcomes, and then really the harmonization is the word that I really keyed on. And I thought, just in the interest of time, I'll use a very, very short example where how standardization and the work in 216 is doing is just amazing. And I really appreciate their work. But like one example on the regulatory side that would be really helpful to have standards and harmonization would be like incident reporting. So for the airlines in particular, we've got 11 different federal agencies that actually have some kind of harmonization or some kind of standard or non-standard reporting requirement that we have to follow. What's interesting in that is that all 11 don't have just one, some of them have multiple. So in fact, we actually have 21 different reporting frameworks that we're supposed to follow. And those of you that make standards know how hard it is and tough it is. Can you imagine, though, if you don't have a standard, that you have to follow something has different definitions, thresholds, timelines, everything else that goes with it. And then you at the other end, not only are you trying to figure it out, but the OEMs are trying to figure it out, so the regulators. So I use that as an example to say that, hey, listen, standards are hard, they're difficult, they're challenging. But for my one point I'd like to make for everyone on here is that, hey, get involved, please join in because we need your help, we need your expertise to build out these standards because they're so important for all the reasons I just mentioned. Patrick, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Marty. And excellent transition there, asking for help, because I had made a note that that's something that I wanted to make sure that we did. I did see a quick question on there. I wanted to reflect on that briefly. Question in the chat: can you elaborate on the nature and the content of the pending rule? Jens, I'm assuming that references into 25.13.19, which will also cover, I think, parts 33 and 35 or 37.
I think it's evolved a few times, but again, it's in the what's called the Unified Regulatory Agenda issued by the U.S. government. If you look at the fall 2023 version, there's a little bit of a footprint in there, but last briefing I got from our federal friends, yeah, that's exactly where it's at.
Yep. And so what that will be is that will be the guidance. It's going to be parallel to the rule. From what we understand, our expectations are that it will be parallel to the rules that were set by EASA for 25.13.19, and that's for consideration of cybersecurity in the design of aircraft systems as it impacts safety. So that's not everything, right? The certification is specifically concerned with safety, not necessarily, financial impacts, loss of personally identifiable information, right? It's, as aviation regulation has always been, it's very centered on and focused on safety. As Jens gave a little bit of the history there, the suite of standards that the SE 216 group works on today, and I'm a co-chair of that committee, is we have a suite of, I'm looking at 7 published documents, and we'll show them to you later. One is DO 326A, which is the Airworthiness Security Process Specification. That's accompanied with a standard DO 356A, which is the Airworthiness Security Methods and Considerations. So those 2 documents, I would say, make up the coupling of the what you have to do, right, is in the Airworthiness Process Specification, but then what are some ways to go about doing it, right? Some examples of how this often happens with standards, right? Well, and as Brenda Acker mentioned, right, the FAA focuses on make sure we give what has to be done, not necessarily the how to do it. And so as we release a standard like this, it goes out to the industry, and the industry gets a little time to absorb it. And then generally they come back with questions and points of confusion. And some of the things that will be clear on how to achieve the what in that set of objectives, but in other places it'll be a little too spongy, and it's important to have a little bit of that feedback loop. And so industry will come back and they'll have a series of questions and updates that they're looking for, and that's when you get to Rev A of this document and Rev B of this document. And so as these standards evolve, it's really a working relationship with the industry. It's a long working relationship because releases don't come fast and quick. But going to what Marty said, having a stakeholder, having a voice at the table is very important. And as a chair of a committee that has a current thread of work that's pretty expansive, we're always looking for people to come and contribute. So if you're a member, we'd love to have you attend. So continuing on with the discussion about a few of those standards that we have. Another one is DO 355. That's information security guidance for continued airworthiness. So the rule that Jens mentioned is coming out, says that we have to certify aircraft with consideration for cybersecurity impacts to safety. Along with that is the requirement for an OEM or a supplier to give any guidance associated with maintaining that security of the operation of the equipment, whether it's an aircraft or what I want to say, buyer furnished equipment, that's installed after the fact as part of an STC. Then we do have some guidance, additional guidance that's come out. These are not specifically invoked by a rule at this point. There's the Aeronautical Information System Security Framework Guidance, that's DO 391. The Information Security Event Management Guidance, that's DO 392. And DO 393 is the process standard for security certification and declaration of ATM ANS ground systems. So you can see this kind of expansive scoping of different areas that the group has thought about and brought together and produced some standards on to help the community respond, and how to think about, as a community, how do we solve these problems. For the most part, something Marty mentioned about working in harmony. The SE216 group works very closely with the WG72 group, and we try and stay as harmonized as we can, right? Because where our standards are harmonized, that even benefits us, even if our regulatory baseline isn't harmonized, because they aren't always, but many times one will advance quicker and the other will come along beside a few years later. But if our standards and our goals are harmonized, as us as industry participants work together to create harmonized guidance, then when rules become more uniform over time, we're all working in the same way. And that makes everybody's job a little bit easier. So I would note that we've got a current scope of work. We are evolving DO 326 from Rev A to Rev B, responding to some of the community's needs. We also have an evolution to DO 355 to go from Rev A to Rev B, I believe, on our radar. That's a new addition. We're also working on two new standards. One on what we call our DSEC standard around aviation data security and how to maintain security on different pieces of information that move through our ecosystem that are part of the supply chain. And then our ISMS standard that we're working on, which is about dealing with and helping companies find a way to be compliant to the emerging EASA regulation of what's called Part IS. And that's more of a holistic organizational, think about a safety management system, but put in place for information security. And again, extending into the organization, how do you structure your organization, process, and policies to ensure that you don't have a means to impact safety through something that happens within your organization and the development that it does. So with that, I'm being super cognizant of time. I think Rebecca, are there any other questions that maybe you wanted to field or kick out?
So there weren't any other questions from the audience yet, but I will ask a question of all three of you. In that you all have done my job for me and highlighted the work of 216 is ongoing. We work with EuroK Working Group 72. What voices would you like to see from new members of the committee if people are interested? What are some of the expertise you'd really wish to get in the committee to help you? And that's for all of you.
I'll start and then hand it to Patrick, who's the lead of this little machinery. To me, and I hinted at it, there are a number of U.S. government agencies and other agencies that are actively looking at cybersecurity. My first point to be made is before they jump ahead and try to take on the problem by themselves, can you put your experts in with the 216 community? Because we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and expertise from FAA is outstanding. Other regulators, I mentioned TSA's involvement. We've strongly encouraged that. Other agencies are involved with the cybersecurity environment more broadly, and I'd encourage them to be there as well. Patrick, over to you as a lead of the machinery.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna do a quick request and kind of hand this down to Marty, because a big participant here, Marty started with mentioning the example of incident reporting, right? How do you do incident reporting? Well, we have a standard, but it's in that kind of evolution stage. I would call it like initial guidance, and I think there's need for more. Well, guess who we need on the committees to help out with that is some of the people that are going to suffer and struggle with those reporting requirements. And that is OEMs, it's the supply chain, it's my company Collins as we build equipment, but also my buddy Marty and the airline group that he represents.
Yeah, thanks for that. I guess I would say that if you could get like from the airline perspective, if you can get one airline to participate, that's great. But if you can get across, the different functions, even better. On our council, we've got folks that are from tech ops, cybersecurity. We have attorneys. We've got folks from government affairs. The cross section of people that you have to have in the room to talk about new standards and the implementation of regulations isn't just the cyber folks. And so anytime you can get more cross section, I really like what Jens said too. Like the more of the potential regulators who are participating in these and they can learn through the process, the better we all are.
And that's a great point. Like having one representative for a whole sector of the industry doesn't always reflect the diversity of organizational structures and processes and policies, right? That exist in those environments. And it helps to have more representative views at the table, because that creates a more harmonized view, because we have much more diverse understanding of how we work and a much more diverse set of representatives sitting at the table. So that's a great comment.
Yes, thank you. And I thank all three of you, Marty, Jens, and Patrick, for participating in the webinar and your continued commitment to the work of 216. 216, if I'm right, Patrick, will be meeting here in Washington, D.C. The week of June 24th, I believe, that you'll be here the week of the PMC meeting as well. I did see the question in the chat. RTCA is a membership organization and we would welcome new members, but we also have a commitment to transparency. You'll find agendas and minutes on the website of the special committee pages so you can track the work. And our plenaries are open to the public for observation. So you can contact myself or any of the program directors for help in getting more involved, seeing what's there. So, and what the specific issues are. And on that note of documents, I'm going to ask the team to pull the last slide up with the list of documents. I know you have them all memorized, Patrick. I do not. So I like to have a cheat sheet. We have the list of published standards and the work in process that we're hoping to complete in the next couple of years, and then it'll be time to revise the other ones, right?
That's correct.
Awesome. Jens, Patrick, Marty, thanks again. You said it better than anyone of the RTCA staff could about how important this standard is. So with that, that is our webinar for today.